Hi there ladies and gents, Jax the Hexer here with my first post-holiday video. Huzzah! The holiday was fantastic, and I actually ended up doing so much that I came back exhausted. Anyway, I spent the last week catching up on IRL stuff, and now it's back onto the videos. Let's start with some public service announcements. Firstly, the channel managed to reach the 300 sub mark while I was away. That is awesome. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope to continue presenting entertaining and informative content for you all. I'll be starting a contest as my way of saying thank you. Keep an eye on the channel over the next day or two for the contest video. Secondly, while I recommend you check out as many of the Hex fan content producers as possible, I'm going to give a shout out to Mocog and Function, who are both presenting great YouTube videos. In particular, they have a really fun contest going on at the moment to win some boosters, so check out their channels. Links are in the description. Finally, all three of us are currently associating with the Haven Guild, and it's seeming like it will be the place to be for any lovers of the game. But, in particular, theory crafters, deck tinkerers, and basically anyone that really wants to push the game to the limits. So if you're looking for a good guild, check us out. Again, the link is in the description. But, without any further ado, let's get on to the video. So what does Jax the Shefer have on the menu today? Well, the latest update went out on Friday. Let's do a card analysis. As before, we'll do the three-pronged analysis, that is, constructed PvP, drafting, and PvE. So, if we're including PvP, there are two cards I could potentially be analysing today. Those are Living Totem and Wizard of the Silver Talon. Who's the lucky winner? Let's welcome today's contestant on the evaluation show, Living Totem! As usual, let's take a look at the card without even thinking about the format we're playing to see what it's like at its core. It has a cost of 2 mana with 1 diamond threshold. This means that it's cheap enough to play in virtually any deck and has a low threshold requirement, so multicolored decks won't have any issues with it. It has 2 attack and 2 defense. Because it is a 2-cost troop, this means that it's considered to be on curve. That is, its attack is equal to or greater than its cost. Basically, while a 2-2 for 2 is certainly not amazing or spectacular, or even uncommon, it definitely has a playable attack and defense, even for a more aggressive deck. Finally, we get to the heart of the totem. Figuratively speaking, of course, as I'm pretty sure totems don't have hearts. In any case, let's look at its ability. You can pay 3 mana to give the totem a permanent boost. You get a choice out of +1/+1, Flight, Life Drain, Steadfast, or Swift Strike. The question is, how good or bad is this ability? Is it astoundingly powerful, or is it a simple meh and look away? The cost is high enough that the ability is certainly not a jaw dropper. However, I'd imagine that at 2 mana, the ability would have been way too powerful. At 3 mana, it's pretty balanced, so I'm okay with that. Of course, looking at the effect, it's quite powerful for 4 reasons. Firstly, the boost is permanent, which means that you aren't just renting the bonus like you might with other troops. Secondly, it's quite flexible. You have 5 different choices as to which boost you want, and all of them do something quite different. However, the third and fourth points are the main reasons this guy has some potential in a vacuum. It's something we've spoken about in previous videos, like Succulent Roostersaur and Wild Root Dancer. The third point is that the ability to boost himself in different ways helps him stay relevant. If we are presented with 2 troops, one that will almost never be relevant against more expensive troops, and one that has the potential to be, the one that can potentially be relevant will usually be the better option. To look at it another way, say our opponent has a Glimmerglim Witch and are attacking us each turn. If we have out a Shield Trainer, we can chump block it for a turn, and then from the next turn onwards keep taking 3 a turn. If we have out the Totem, we can either pump it to 3-3 and trade with it, or eventually pump it to 3-3 and give it Swift Strike, or just make it a 4-4, and pretty much make the Witch irrelevant against it. That potential is very powerful, though of course the mana requirement makes it quite balanced. Basically, if you're pumping the totem up, you aren't developing your battlefield position. The fourth point is also quite important. The ability can be activated as a quick action. What this means is that simply having mana up can make your opponent act like the totem has one of the abilities. As an example, it's your turn, the totem is able to attack, and your opponent has a Shield Trainer. You have 3 mana available, and you attack with the totem. Your opponent probably won't block, as if they do, you can give your totem either +1/+1 or Swift Strike, and you'll effectively kill the Shield Trainer without costing you a card, generating you card advantage. With that overview out of the way, let's look at specific formats. Let's begin with PvP Constructed. I don't believe the card will be an auto-include in any deck by any stretch of the imagination. The reason for this is pretty straightforward. While I consider the mana cost for the ability fair in order to keep the troop balanced, it's still expensive in the context of the +1/+1, which will probably be the option most often chosen. To highlight this, say our opponent plays a Glimmerglen Witch, and I currently have out a Living Totem. It's my turn, I have 3 mana, and I choose to attack. My opponent blocks, I give the totem +1/+1, and the 2 troops trade. From my point of view, I've paid 5 mana to kill what is effectively a vanilla troop. My opponent, on the other hand, knows that he killed a 5 cost troop of mine, that is, 2 cost plus 1 ability activation, with only a 3 cost troop, so it's a win for him. Essentially, in a vacuum, the ability will likely be too expensive for this guy to make it into every diamond deck in Constructed. But what if we're not talking about a vacuum? What about specific scenarios? There are 2 troops I really like alongside the totem. Wild Root Dancer, who you've probably guessed I'm totally smitten by, and Ruby Pyromancer. Let's take a closer look. The Wild Root Dancer can give the totem +2/+2 pumps by simply playing a resource. This more or less frees up your mana to give him his other powerful abilities, such as Swift Strike or Flight. Freeing up mana like this is certainly a good thing. Furthermore, both the Root Dancer and the totem love the sources created by Chlorophylla. The Dancer can immediately give the totem +4/+4, a huge boost, and then the next turn the totem will have access to another 2 mana that it can use to give itself nifty abilities or pump itself further. Basically, the 2 cards can certainly work well together, and with other cards. Looking at the Ruby Pyromancer, it's more of the same. She pumps the totem's attack, allowing you to save your mana for the more useful modes of the ability. Not pumping defense isn't a huge issue, as giving the totem Swift Strike often makes defense irrelevant, as blocking troops won't get to attack back unless they survive the totem's attack. So, what's the verdict in Constructed PvP? Well, it's a card that has potential, but in a vacuum it probably won't be chosen in a deck list. However, with the right cards around it, it could turn out to be a solid inclusion in a few types of decks. Basically, keep an eye on it, especially as more and more cards that can help it are spoiled. What's next on the agenda? Ah yes, let's look at the Living Totem from the point of view of drafting. While there are certainly bombier bombs out there, cards like Zombie Plague and my beloved Root Dancer come to mind. Living Totem is a solid card in a draft. It's not a definite first pick, given that there's a lot of removal that can be used against him, and that to become a bomb requires a decent mana investment. But if you do pick it up, and you are playing Diamond, you'll definitely be playing him. Because he's a 2-cost troop, you'll be able to get him down early. This is important if your opponent is playing a very aggressive deck. You'll be able to trade early and keep yourself alive as you get to late game. Or you can take an extra hit early on, then give the totem an ability on the next turn to make him a formidable blocker. Against a slower deck, you'll feel less pressure to sacrifice him. You can play your other cards first and develop your board position, or you can start pumping mana into him turn after turn, until he turns from a lowly 2/2 into a legitimate, devastating bomb. But again, I'll stress that the 3 cost of the ability means that he is, by no means, a definite first pick and isn't the best bomb around. If we look at him as an evasive troop instead, Corrupt Harvester costs 4 to give a 3/3 body, evasion, and life drain. To get that on the totem, it costs us 11. The base cost, then 3 activations of his ability for +1/+1, flight, and life drain. Of course, Corrupt Harvester can't boost himself further after that, but that 7 mana highlights that in terms of a bomb, he isn't the best. But in terms of a troop and a card in a draft, he isn't the worst and should definitely be considered if you see him. I'll also point out that must-answer cards are usually good. While 11 mana for a Pseudo Harvester is quite steep, your Pseudo Harvester is a card that threatens to steal the game from the opponent unless they do something about it. So, what's our judgment when it comes to drafting? Well, it's not the best bomb, but it's by far not the worst troop. You won't always first pick it, but sometimes you will. And if you ever have it, and you're in Diamond, you'll definitely be playing it. Finally, let's look at the totem from a PvE point of view. In a vacuum, it's probably as underwhelming in PvE as it is in Constructed PvP. However, let's take a look at the gear that we can use with it. The helm is certainly not bad, but it's not wonderful either. It's a neat bonus, but chances are you won't actually see a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th Living Totem in a game. If you do though, it effectively makes the ability far more cost efficient. If you have 2 totems out, the ability effectively costs 1.5 mana per activation, which is a lot stronger. The 2nd totem you play will also enter the battlefield as much more than just a 2/2, if you've already been pumping your 1st totem. The boots, however, flip the totem's worth on its head. It makes your whole team that much stronger. To put it another way, it's effectively an Inspire ability that you can pay to activate whenever you want, and that doesn't care about a troop's cost at all. Remember how I said in the initial overview that one of the major upsides to the totem's ability was that it allowed him to stay relevant? Well, the ability of the boots means the totem can make all your troops stay relevant. The prospect of playing a deck where every troop can potentially be very relevant in the late game is amazing, and with such a wide array of abilities, he can often offer a solution to any problem. In particular, being able to give all your blocking troops Swift Strike can make attacking into you very awkward, allowing you to develop your board position further if you're currently behind. To summarise our PvE perspective, without the boots he'll be okay, but won't be an auto-include, much the same as with constructed PvP. However, with the boots, he'll be a very powerful boost to your forces and will be a welcome addition to many diamond decks. So if you manage to get your hands on the boots, definitely think about just how much the totem could help your troops out. To round things off, let's take a look at some synergy that will be possible with the totem. How about Living Totem and Ritualist of the Spring Litter? The totem is going to like any card that can ramp, but at this point in spoilers, the Ritualist is the ramp card with the most potential, given that it can potentially give you more than 2 mana a turn, and the best the other ramp cards can do is 2. Consider this situation: an almost mono wild Shin-Hair deck that has splashed diamonds simply for 4 living totems, in PvE, and with the totem boots. The Ritualist should be able to generate a good amount of mana, which you can then pump into the totems to boost your entire squad. Suddenly, those Ritualists are enormous, flying, life-draining, mana-generating rabbits. That's a sexy prospect. In the end, Living Totem is a troop that is okay with a hint of potential when considered in a vacuum, but can become much stronger if included in the right deck, and who gets much stronger in PvE thanks to his legendary equipment. I can't be sure how PvE demand will affect the market as opposed to PvP demand, but at this stage I wouldn't stress about how much it will cost. I can't imagine it's going to be too much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap. Thanks for watching, remember to keep your eye on the channel for the contest video, and as always, remember, keep being exceptional.